The hall of Vekara was built to impress and mislead. Polished bone ribs, arched like the inside of a leviathan. A black glass floor that turned everyone into their own reflection. And lanterns veiled in silk so faces looked softer than intentions. Music thrummed in the rafters like a low-grade threat. Courtiers held their frills just so, pretending poise wasn't rehearsal. I stood at the foot of the dais in a borrowed dress uniform that fit like an opinion. Translator on my collar, 3 orders in my pocket, secure the alliance. Don't get stabbed, make humanity look taller than it is. Pick one of my girls. Human, purred Warlord Vekker, rings clicking against the rail. Seal peace in blood and song. His daughters entered in a ribbon procession. Each a study in curated radiant sopal skin, mirrored eyes. Gowns engineered to sway on the half-beat where hearts make mistakes. They were practiced at being chosen. The last one wasn't. She lagged a half-step behind. Draped in a scab-brown cloak the color of old scabs and spilled tea. A slag mask hid her face, lumpish and scorched, one dull optic blinking like a tired ember. Her boots were 2 sizes wrong and argued with the floor. Something under the cloak made a toolbox clank with each second stride. Laughter rolled the room in a polite wave. Not cruel exactly, worse, confident. You could hear men congratulating themselves for having eyes. I kept mine busy. A servant tripped on a ribbon. The pretty line rippled, then smoothed to slow. The ugly girl's gloved hand shot out from the cloak, to fingers catching the tray by its void. Not the rim, so momentum died clean. She placed it back on the servant's palm without stealing the man's dignity. No one thanked her. No one noticed. A courtyard beast, a nervous, antlered thing used for decor, skittered at a cymbal crash and tangled its harness in a lantern chain. The beauties flinched as trained. The ugly one stepped sideways, palm to the creature's shoulder, pressure against the grain of panic. The beast stilled, blinked, remembered its ankles, and breathed like it owned them. Your choice? The warlord asked, smile edged. I should have looked dazzled and picked a mirror. I thought about the second order in my pocket, don't get stabbed, damned, the third make us look taller. Then I thought about the tray and the beast and the way competence tried to hide and failed around her. I pointed. Her. The hall did the sharp intake that precedes a good story or a bad decision. A courtier laughed aloud, then pretended he'd coughed. Someone whispered human taste like a diagnosis. Vekkar's frills flattened a fraction. You humans are fond of jokes. I am, I said. This isn't one. The slag mask tilted. Tiny calibration in the single optic, as if she'd been bracing for humiliation and needed a new muscle for surprise. Very well, the warlord said, voice gone bright and brittle. Let the alliance be bound to your taste. Bring forth the contract. We walked to the signing table through a corridor of eyes. The daughter's perfumes smelled like thunderstorms and currency. The ugly girl smelled faintly of resin, machine oil, and rain on metal. Up close. The cloak wasn't filthy. It was work-worn, stitched, reinforced at stress points, weight balanced to hide a harness. The mask's slag was poured over a grid that wasn't random. A decoy built by someone who understood load. A thin court scribe unrolled vellum that complained about being alive in a world with ink. My hand hovered over the pen. I caught a new detail on the underside of the ugly girl's glove, at the knuckle. A tiny burn scar shaped like a crescent, an engineer's signature wound. Earned when a solder point lies and you believe it anyway. Name? The scribe asked, bored and dangerous. The slag mask angled, not toward him, toward me. Sail, she said, voice sanded flat by the mask's throat. Anonymity pressed into every consonant. Sail, I repeated, and watched how the warlord's mouth tightened at the sound of his own daughter. Named without embroidery. Sign, Vekker said. I did. My pen scratched the human letters for Elias Wren, Terra Compact, and beneath that, the word my grandmother taught me to write before my name. Listen, as I lifted the nib. The black glass floor caught our reflections, the court, the daughters, the cloaked outline beside me, and threw them back ideologically. In the falsest mirror in the room, she still looked steady. They laughed us out with smiles as sharp as cutlery. I walked with my choice at my side, counting the ways a room tells you who it thinks you are. At the threshold, a chime sounded, a maintenance tone, the kind palaces used to hide their arteries. It was out of tune by a hair. The ugly girl's head turned by that hair. Her measurable flinch wasn't at the laughter. It was at bad calibration. That was when I knew two things. I had not made a mistake. The joke, if there was one, wasn't on me. Vekara's doc mistasted like coins left on the tongue. Our embassy skiff TCS modest proposal. Because diplomats have a sense of humor that ages badly floated in its berth. With the patience of a bus, I offered my arm to Sail. She ignored it and took the handrail like a person who had installed it. In the lock, the pressure equalized with a sigh that sounded guilty. Sail stood very still, cloak pooling, slag mask aimed at nothing. My comms officer pinged my wrist 3 times. Elias, what did you do? And I replied with the only language she respects, a shrug emoji, and a photo of the contract countersigned, on the bridge. I made the introductions. Sail, this is Lieutenant Cato Nav, Chief Ibarra Comms, and Sergeant Drez Security. Team, this is Sail, she said herself, monotone pressed flat by the mask, like someone filing the emotion off a word to see if it still fits. Hungry? I asked, because hospitality is the cheapest diplomacy. Later, she said. Then drifted to the shadow near the systems rack and, listen, not to us, to the ship. Head canted, still as a schematic. I felt suddenly loud, the way you do when a surgeon enters a room and the furniture realizes it has opinions. On the scope, a faint laddered shimmer started combing our hull. Ibarra frowned, nudged Gain, swore in 3 polite alphabets. They're lancing us. Friendly IFF, sloppy handshake. Vec Heron Harbor welcome tap. Cell's right hand, gloved, vanished under the cloak. A stubby antenna and a coil of fiber appeared like a rabbit out of an accusation. She set the antenna on the console, knuckled the housing once, and the shimmer flattened as if someone had smoothed the sheet. You were being painted, she said. I corrected their etiquette. Cato blinked. You corrected a harbor lance from memory? Cell's optic brightened by a measurable lumen. A tilt, the smallest nod. We cast off. The skiff purred. The city receded, a crown of teeth and lanterns. I poured tea in my quarters, set 1 cup by Sail, watched steam negotiate with the air and lose. She didn't touch it. Why the mask? I asked carefully. The cloak. My father says suitors pick with eyes, she said. He is right. I wanted one who uses something else, and if no one picked you, then we have learned something about suitors, she said, as if reading a meter. And about my father's assumptions. Cruel test, efficient, she conceded. Also fun, a beat. For me, the mask turned toward the bulkhead as if the wall had said something worth writing down. You're ducting murmurs in C corridor, she added. Commanded flow versus actual differs by 4%. You leak cold where you mean to brag. I thumbed my cuff. Drez, send a tech to C corridor. Check murmurs, Drez, copy. Also, did the cloaked guest just insult our ventilation? Diagnosed it, I said. Insulting is your department. We ate in the tiny mess with the easy choreography of a ship that's done hard work, and moved on to harder. Sail took the seat with the best view of the panel reflections in the viewport, and pretended it was by accident. When the coffee machine hiccuped, she tapped a nonsensical sequence along its side, and it stopped lying about being busy. You're an engineer, I said. Sometimes, she replied. What other times? Memory architect, she said. I set rules for cities to remember what hurt them. Floods, fires, tyrants. I teach structures to be bored by drama. Ibarra almost choked on laughter. Marry her, Commander, she muttered, forgetting she was on open channel. Cell's optic did not acknowledge humor. The tilt of her head did, back on the bridge, as we skimmed the upper atmosphere on a transfer arc. Traffic lit the boards, miners dragging pride behind them. A medical tug begging right-of-way for a ruptured lung. A ceremonial barge that thought schedules were suggestions. Channel 16 bloomed with the most human sound we export. Rules that keep strangers alive. Sail listened. Your doctrine is rude, she said, almost fond. Help or stop, both are love, Ibarra said. Because we have a sticker that says that and it's cheaper than therapy. The mask swiveled toward me. Why did you choose me, Elias Wren? Not my title, my name. An intimacy and an audit. Because you caught a tray by the void, I said. Because you calmed an animal by reading its panic like grain. Because the toolbox clank under your cloak kept time with the music. not your walk. You were watching, she said. Counting, I admitted. Which is a form of watching. She considered that either the sentence or me. Most would have chosen a mirror, she said. I require a window. And what do you require your window to look at? I asked. She didn't answer. She stood. She walked the perimeter of the bridge, fingertips ghosting consoles without touching. At the access panel by the hatch she paused, listened again, and then knelt precise, unhurried. To screws out, a whisper of fiber, a gentle bite of teeth and copper. The panel's status light, which had been lying to us since before I learned the ship's name, went from green optimistic to amber honest. Your collision net would have failed under crosswind. She said. It will not now. Cato's eyes did the math, then the gratitude. Thank you. Sail stood. Later, she said, meaning you are welcome in a dialect I was going to have to learn. We reached station, docked, endured the ritual of faces, signatures, seals, gifts with barbed meanings. Through it all, Sail stayed cloaked, masked, a shadow beside me that made other shadows behave. The warlord's rival house sent an overly polished envoy who smiled with too many teeth and complimented my shoes as if that were diplomacy. Sel's head angled a fraction. I added the smile to a list titled Bad Weather. In the quiet after ceremony, we walked the station's ring. The artificial night sat gentle on the glass. Below, the planet turned its slow opinion. Sail stood with her palms on the railing like a person feeling a bridge's pulse. You picked me, she said at last. Now I pick you, is that how your customs work? I asked, trying to keep my voice from tripping. It is how I work, she said. You did not flinch when they laughed. You watched for small failures and put your hands where they mattered. You wear a uniform that fits like a lie and you tell the truth anyway. I require that. What are you testing? I asked. Still, whether you hold still while a city rearranges itself, she said. Whether you enjoy boring miracles. Whether you understand that beauty is a budget. I turned that over until it stopped throwing sparks. And if I fail, you won't, she said simply. Then, as if changing the subject to weather, there will be an attempt on your skiff before station night turns. An attempt. Boarding. She clarified. Annexation disguised as panic. Rival house. They like annexations. I prefer receipts. My stomach dropped an inch, then stabilized at work. How do you know? Your corridor hum changed when we docked, she said. Someone tested your locks with a lazy pulse and a confident schedule. That is not a pirate. That is a cousin. Why tell me? Why not? I gestured at the cloak, the mask, the 1,000 tricks I was sure she could play alone. Because you are the test, she said. When the mask comes off, I will require you to understand what you're seeing. Before I could answer, a soft chime sounded in my cuff. Station night breach drill. Only it wasn't a drill, because drills don't make old ducting sing. Sel's head turned toward the sound, then toward me. Now, she said, and the slag mask clicked at the hinge like a secret relieved to be told. What was under it would change the treaty and my life, but that belonged to the next chapter. For now, I did the one brave thing I had fully rehearsed. I didn't blink. The station night alarm did the polite chime first, the one that asks everyone to please not be interesting. Then the bulkheads answered in their older language, metal speaking stress in the key of now. Sel's hands lifted to the hinges at her jaw. Click, slip, hush. The slag mask came free like a lie that had outlived its usefulness. The scab-brown cloak shrugged off in a single practiced spill. Underneath wasn't softness. It was design. Her face was a living tessellation, luminous cartilage and crystal facets catching red alarm light and editing it into something calmer. Multi-lens eyes adjusted through 3 focal planes and held. The misfit boots locked to deck with a mag clack that felt like consent. What had clanked like a toolbox under the cloak unfolded into a close-fit exo harness, nested tools, fiber reels, an antenna stub, a compact coilgun holstered like a last resort and already bored. Boarders, I said, because sometimes stating the obvious is the fastest way to accept it. 3 teams, she said without checking a display. 1 earnest to theatrical. Vectoring along the trumpet you call a corridor. Our corridor is a trumpet? Dres asked over comms, already running. You built it to look efficient, Sail said, dropping to a kneel at a hatch console. It funnels sound and bodies. Loud, predictable. Watch, she popped the panel. Not with violence, but with respect. Hands finding latches where the manufacturer never admitted they'd be. 2 leads, 1 bridge, a kiss of copper. She was in the spine of my ship like a midwife, on our feed. The invaders' heat ghosts flowed along the ring and hit the laundries left at the fork. Just as she'd promised. Why left? Cato asked, hustling to cut them off. Superstition, Sale said. That corner whispers. They think it's an exit. It's a dryer. Her fingers flicked. Vent steam into their optics in 3, 2. I keyed the override. The laundry block exhaled like a dragon with good hygiene. Steam filled the bend. The 3 ghosts turned into one irritated blob. Confused and damp. Marines, Drez said. Your movie moment is now. Non-lethal. Helmets on. Be kind. They moved. Quiet and mean in the way of professionals who pride themselves on leaving paperwork. Not widows. Cell's attention cut to the next breach vector. Secondary team cutting for Bay, she murmured. They've brought a bite saw and too much confidence. I will adjust their mood. She braided 2 strands of fiber, slid them together like an old trick, and jacked her voice into the corridor speakers. When she spoke, the ship carried it the way a cathedral carries a hymn. Yield and be catalogued. Resist and be invoiced. Vekherans fear death less than debt. The saw's whine stuttered. Who is that? One of the boarders asked. Their mic opened just enough to be delicious. Administration, Sale said. And killed the bay lights in a pattern that spells your mother is disappointed in the local hazard. Code. I hadn't known we had that pattern. I added it to doctrine. Drez's team ghosted through steam and good intentions. Zip ties whispering. Boots soft. 2 minutes later, deck to secure. 3 damp, 1 sulking. 0 martyrs. 3rd team? I asked. Already lost, Sale said. They were an echo noise to keep you from hearing the cousin. Rival house. Annexation with a fig leaf. My stomach performed the traditional officer's dismount and landed in a stance called work. Can you show me where they are? I asked. Cell's hands kept moving, but her eyes, those precise, hungry lenses, shot to mine. You do not need me to show you. You need me to make you able to show yourself next time. Teach me later, I said, and meant it. Now, her mouth ticked, first time I'd seen it aim at a smile without committing. Now, on the tactical, she painted a map with words instead of lines. Your trumpet corridor feeds from this hub. They chose the left because it sounds like hollow. Your bay bolts complain on AC beat. They are cutting there. Your air reads to ticks sweet. They have cracked a duct, put sweetness in their sinuses and shame in their feet. Cato, I said. Vent a whiff of citrus cleaner into junction C. Drez. Grease the deck at the cut with spill foam. Code orange. Marines, ready catch nets. Ibarra, play founding day into the PA just loud enough for conscience. Copy, for voices said. And the ship obeyed, on the bay cam. The saw bit through, the plate dropped. The first boarder stepped with the confidence of a man who had never met polymer foam. In a thin sheen, he did a split he would remember at weddings. His partners stumbled. Our nets kissed them. The founding day reading washed the room with a ground controller's voice. That has kept better people alive on worse days. The saw spun down across comms. A breath that was almost a laugh and more like relief. Deck 1 secure, Drez reported. 1 sprained pride, to damp, 3 captured. No damage except to our dryer. Send them a lint filter, Ibarra said. Invoice attached. Sale sealed the panel with the same courtesy she'd used to open it. As if good manners extend to machines. She stood, rolled her shoulders, and every magnet in her boots retuned for steadiness. I realized I had been holding my breath. I let it go. You moved the battle into policy, I said. Administration scales, she replied. Bullets don't. Who are you? Cato asked. Off-fighting protocol. Besides the ugliest girl in a very pretty room? Sale regarded him with a gaze that could strip paint or errors. I am the architect of Vekhara's memory cities, she said, not bragging, accounting. I wrote the storm budget the year the seas misbehaved. I rebuild what my father breaks, and my sisters sing over it so no one notices who held the wrench. And the disguise? I asked, though I knew the answer and wanted it recorded properly. Every prince who visited chose a mirror, she said. I wanted one who would choose a window, My translator blessed caught the wordplay and sat down. Exhausted. Over open station net. A clipped message arrived from the rival house, a legal posture disguised as apology. Ibarra forwarded it to sandbox of shame. The adapter where dangerous packets loop until they confess their harm. 10 seconds later, our legal AI coughed up a draft, fines, sanctions. A sternly worded maintenance order to reroute their ambitions into drains they'd neglected at home. Sale glanced at the footer. Add a cake clause, she said. Cake clause, I said. When they fix the drains, they bake a cake and invite the neighborhood. She explained. It makes the repair stick. Ibarra's fingers flew. Added. With recipe. The last of the boarders were marched through our trumpet corridor. Politely damp, eyes wide with the revelation that they were going to live and it would be boring. Dres logged them into custody with photos, names, and a checkbox labeled would have been a problem if not tired. The adrenaline left the bridge the way tides leave, reluctant, then all at once. Cato sat, laughed once, a tiny bark that pretended it wasn't a sob. Ibarra leaned her forehead to her console. I stood very still so the room could reset around a new center of gravity. Sale watched us watching her, then turned her attention to the tiny failures that had nearly become disasters. The green light that lied, the dryer that sang as if it were a duck, the duck that sweetened without permission. Why tell me? I asked again, softer now, the fight on the far side of us. About the attack, about you. Her eyes found mine, held a beat longer than comfort. Because the test is not whether you can survive surprise, she said. It is whether you can be surprised and not abandon the schedule. What schedule? I said, already smiling because I knew. Feed, air, honor, repair, nap, she recited. Then do it again. The ship exhaled. Somewhere downring, the dryer finished its song and went quiet, as if a household god had found its chair again. Over the bridge speakers, Channel 16 resumed its ordinary holiness. Cargo 2, you are clear through lane Delta. Medical tug, you have priority. Be advised, courtesy lanes are in effect. Keep it, be safe. Sale picked up the slag mask, weighed it, set it on the console like an old tool that had done its job. Your species' deadliest trick, she said, almost to herself, is choosing differently. And yours? I asked. She slid the antenna back into her harness, each motion exact, economical, assured. Teaching structures to remember what hurt them and what helped. I nodded. Filed it under marry her mentally and under don't be an idiot professionally. The bridge laughed at something Ibarra said into her sleeve. Steam ghosts curled off cooling conduits. The legal packets went out with polite teeth. On the station net, the rival house's apology upped itself from posture to penitence, cake clause included. In my cuff, a private text from Warlord Vecker pulsed once. We will discuss your choice. I muted it. Sale stepped close enough for me to see the hairline seams where crystal met cartilage. The fine solder of a life built to hold. Next time, she said, you will set the vents before I tell you. You will move the fight into minutes before I arrive. And you will bring a lint filter to laundry drills. Yes, architect, I said. She angled her head. A facet warmed. Sale, she corrected, and I swallowed the title like a pill that will make me better. She walked off the bridge without looking back, boots clicking a new tempo into our trumpet corridor, already tuning my ship into the key she preferred, competence. Behind her, the war we hadn't fought lay neatly filed under invoices. I let myself lean on the rail for exactly 3 heartbeats. Then I straightened, because the schedule said report, and because the next chapter treaty, clauses. A balcony with cheap lights was already walking toward us with the steady gait of a person who has never once fallen for a deadline. Treaties taste different after a boarding action. The ink dries with purpose. By morning, the station's ceremonial hall had traded last night's perfume for the honest smells of coffee, ozone, and a floor scrubbed because people you love will be walking on it. Warlord Vekkar's court assembled, frills set to dignified, smiles calibrated to inevitable. The rival house's envoys arrived 10 minutes early with damp hair and the posture of citizens who had recently met a dryer the hard way. Sale came beside me unmasked. The room really saw her and flinched the way a machine does. When truth replaces a placeholder part, a ripple of recalibration went through the ranks. The laughter from the choosing was gone, evaporated like bad varnish. My daughter, the warlord said, words shaped carefully around humility, has a talent for theater, engineering. Sale corrected. Same religion, I said. Because bridges, budgets, and good plays all collapse without load paths. We sat. The scribes unrolled their pretty threats, and we replaced them with standards. Clause 1, audit rights. Human and Veccharian teams will co-measure the things that keep strangers alive: drains, pumps, traffic lanes, food storage on a schedule, not a scandal. Numbers public by default. Lies punished with maintenance duty, not poetry. Clause 2, be safe Carter's local equivalent. No thruster plume, market expansion, or parade route may endanger pollinators, nurseries, or low reef homes. Violations route to sandbox of shame until repaired, then celebrated with cake. Clause 3, courtesy doctrine mutual. State name and intent. Help it happen safely or stop it. Both are love. Veccharian translation appended. Yes, we kept love. We let the court argue over that for a full, satisfying minute before the word passed by acclamation and 3 scandalized giggles. Clause 4, boring miracles committee. Stood up at once. Chaired in rotation by 1 person with calluses, 1 with a spreadsheet kink, and 1 who can make a 5-year-old sit for 10 minutes without bribery. Sale nominated a pump foreman. I nominated Ibarra. The River School sent a teacher who weaponized stickers. Clause 5, prospective union test protocols. Sells addendum. My favorite line item in any treaty anywhere. Remove masks from diplomats, not just brides. All suitors of alliances or people serve 1 week in a pump house, 1 in a crush, 1 on Channel 16 traffic control. Public may laugh. Candidates must not flinch. Results posted. Cake optional. Recommended. The rival envoys tried an old gambit flowery amendments with hidden knives. We fed their clauses into sandbox of shame. The knives came back labeled utensil kitchen. They signed with the brisk relief of people who have met limits and survived. When the last seal clicked, the hall didn't cheer. It exhaled. The good kind. We toured one of Cell's memory districts that afternoon. Streets that had learned flood heights and refused to repeat heartbreak. Markets that tuned stall fees to footfall, not donor ego. A creche whose ceiling lights dimmed when toddlers got loud, teaching them that quiet makes the sun come back. My crew took notes like thieves planning to redistribute the wealth. On a balcony strung with inexpensive lights that had outlasted 3 fashions. I watched Sale watch her city. Her profile caught dusk and convinced it to behave. You rewrote your father's table. I said quietly, with minutes and drains. Tables are just floors you hold higher, she said. Make them bear weight. Would you have chosen me? I asked. Courage stumbling a step then catching up. If I hadn't chosen you? No, she said, not unkindly. Choosing is the test. Windows don't carry themselves. It hurt and healed at the same time. I laughed like a man discovering a bruise is a lesson. Fair. She angled me a look. Lenses warm at the edges. Beauty is a budget, a lies. You spend it on structures that keep people alive or on mirrors. Mirrors don't hold weight. Down on the key. The Boring Miracles Committee ran its first meeting standing up. Because chairs had not yet been delivered and because standing makes speeches shorter. The pump foreman swore he'd stop calling rich drains priority. Ibarra stapled the cake clause to a maintenance order. And the River School teacher drew 3 B's on the whiteboard and wrote neighbors. First in a child's hand so the adults would remember who was reading. A courier arrived breathless with a ribbon-wrapped apology from the rival house. Legal penalties accepted, repair tithe pledged. Cake calendared. The recipe, almond honey with citrus glaze. Sale glanced at the line that said invite neighborhood. Good, she said. Repairs that don't end in sugar are less sticky, Night Edgeden. Lanterns woke. Somewhere. A pump changed key from working hard to working right, the soft hum that makes shoulders drop in. Rooms that matter, walk. Sale asked, we did. Through alleys that had taught themselves to be friendly to footsteps and unfriendly to stormwater. Street vendors offered tea with the precise aggression of people who have survived empires by hydrating their neighbors. Children practice valve songs, cars invention clapping the timing sequence that opens and closes sluices in a flood. Pelu had tuned the melody to kids' throats so they could yell it in the right key. When weather needed help, I rectangularly paid a busker to stop playing a drum upside down and start playing it right side up. He looked offended until it sounded better, and then took credit. On a wall, new posters had gone up in for scripts and one polite emoji. Later is cancelled. Hot work permits available at the door. Bring receipts. Take cake. We returned to the embassy and found my crew arguing over which clause would break first. None, I said. We wrote them like bridges. Sale hid a smile and a cup of tea she still wouldn't drink. News travels weird. By week's end, a different lordling on a different moon tried the antique line on our joint delegation. Pick one. Of my girls. Human, with a tilt that said, "Watch me domesticate you." We arrived with a truck full of masks. We put them on ministers, suitors, guards, the host himself. Then we ran interviews in pump rooms and creches and the traffic tower. We let the public laugh. We chose the one who held a flashlight at the correct angle for a stranger without being asked. The treaty that followed looked suspiciously like ours, with local spices and the same clause that assigns cake to repairs. Copy-paste is a holy art. Some people tell the story wrong. A human picked the ugliest girl, and she turned out secretly beautiful. The truth is ruder and kinder. I chose the only person in the room who already acted like infrastructure. She took off a disguise and kept everything that mattered: the mind, the hands, the standards. We did not redeem her. She hired us. On founding day, newly adopted in Vecara, after Sale decided schedules are a form of love. The Memory District posted its audits like festival banners. People came to touch the numbers with working hands. Children put B stickers on drains that listened. The cake clause debuted to wild, sticky success. Even the rival envoys licked honey off their fingers and looked almost redeemable. In the palace, less a throne room now, more a shop class with better chairs. The prospective union test ran its second cohort. Candidates in formal wear learned to triage a valve leak. A prince washed creche bottles until the river school teacher nodded once high praise. A minister answered Channel 16 for an hour and came away humbled enough to lower his frills. For strangers in hallways, Warlord Vecker, to his limited credit, learned to ask what do the drains think before proposing a parade. Progress is measurable in where powerful men stare before they speak. That night, the balcony with the cheap lights hosted a small, unofficial ceremony. The treaty copies lay under a paperweight shaped like a pump handle. Selznick's harness hung on a chair like a guest who knew it could return to work at any second, and felt no shame about it. You know, I said, practicing bravery where no one could invoice me for it. Marriage clauses in Veccharan law are dense. They are, she agreed. So we wrote ours thin. A schedule, not shackles. She handed me a folded sheet. It contained 5 lines, her hand precise. We will keep the schedule. Feed, air, honor, repair, nap. We will write receipts. We will choose windows. Cake optional. Recommended. We forgot ladders. I said. She tapped on her. Included. I signed. She signed. We stapled the paper to the treaty copy with an office stapler that made the satisfying thunk of small commitments made large by repetition. Below us, the city hummed its new key. Somewhere a dryer finished without humiliating anyone. On Channel 16, a teenager with a careful voice cleared a medical tug through a lane and then said, "Thank you," as if gratitude were part of the fuel mix. It is. Sale leaned shoulder to shoulder with me and watched her world do what she had designed it to do. Work, your species' deadliest trick, she said, almost fond, is choosing differently. And yours? I asked. She tilted her head, facets catching our cheap lights and turning them noble, making the different choice boring enough to last. We stood like that until the lights wanted sleep. Then we did the bravest thing competent people do. We kept the schedule. Feed, air, honor, repair, nap. In the morning, the Boring Miracles Committee met again and argued about gutters like the fate of empires depended on it. It does. The rival house delivered their cake, and Finn, yes, that Finn. Now the river school's child delegate cut the first slice with the solemnity of a coronation. Back in the embassy skiff, a green light that had once lied to me now told the truth. I tapped it like a good luck charm and thought about a hall of polished bone, a slag mask, a clank pretending to be clumsy, and a hand that had caught a tray by the void. Everyone had laughed when I chose the ugliest girl. Turns out, I'd picked the architect, and together we wrote the only punchline worth repeating. A city that holds, a treaty that sticks, a future engineered to be too well-made to notice most days until the one day it saves you, quietly, on time, with receipts and cake.